Day 6 in Scotland, we left Edinburgh and headed toward Dalmally, which is close to Glencoe. On our way to Dalmally, where our accommodation was, we went and found the Devil's Pulpit. Now I say found because the Devil's Pulpit is not marked with any signs, but instead we had some rough instructions we found online to follow. Basically, we had to park at a certain marking at the side of the road, follow the road until we got to a bridge, hop over a fence, follow sort of this just rough sort of muddy path and this farmer's fence until we saw a tree that had kind of a Y shape, until to our left was a staircase that went down. The Devil's Pulpit was something out of a goblin fairy tale. It was terrifying and eerie and haunting, and the red water that is where it gets its namesake, that the devil, who, when he came to try to convert some priests, turned the water red. It was a place that made you feel like such an adventurer because you had to seek out and find it and then make your way down this staircase that was put in the 17th or 18th century. And thank goodness there was some climbing rope which we used, because the staircase is completely broken in places and it's like a death trap. So it was such a unique opportunity because you felt like true adventurers finding this place that otherwise would be lost or forgotten.
Careful. What do you have to say?
It's fun. I feel like a little kid.
A 5-minute drive from our accommodation in Dalmally was Kilchurn Castle, which had its own unique charm to it. Surrounded by mountains and with the luck of a great sort of Scottish gloomy day, we were fortunate that it didn't rain on us, but it was just enough atmosphere to make you feel something wild should happen in this place. After a long day of adventuring and trekking through so much mud, we were very anxious to settle in to our cozy accommodations at the historic Dalmally train station bed and breakfast. If you ever have the opportunity to visit Scotland and plan to tour about the Glencoe area, consider staying with Liz and Graham, who make excellent hosts. They also have a very cute dog. The next day we got up early and after breakfast got ready for some real hiking. From Dalmally we drove out to Glencoe. And if you have only the opportunity to drive through Glencoe, there's no time to maybe hike or stop, just drive through it because it's absolutely incredible and unbelievable just to see mountains layered one after another after another after another. For me, Glencoe was a place where I really put myself in the position of my protagonist. I thought about being in her shoes, hiking, for a good portion of the day. A lot of the hikes we did were 3 or 4 hour hikes, but still, even just the exertion of that, I thought about being in her position, just seeing certain landscapes that she never would have seen before. For myself, growing up in southern Ontario, there's no hills. It's all flat where I live, and even the opportunities I've had to go, further north in Ontario, and even out to BC, there's hills and there's mountains, and BC was the closest thing I had to being ready for Scotland, but nothing compared. The mountains were just unbelievable. This particular hike that we did was the Lost Valley, where the MacDonald clan were said to have hidden their cattle, and when you hike it, you can't imagine, cows going up this path. Something that was really neat about doing this hike was how wild it felt. Even though there was a path you followed, there was places where the path went really close to the edge of the cliff, or it trailed over a small waterfall. It broke in places, and it was interrupted by rocks that had fallen and now were in the way. And as you went further and further, there was less and less people who continued onward. And you really felt alone up there. There was one point where it started to rain a little, and I was a bit concerned because we had taken some risks crossing at places where certainly if the water levels were higher, we wouldn't have been able to cross. And so when it started to rain, I was a little bit worried we might get stuck up there, because if it had rained, we would have had to just stay where we were, buckle down, and wait for it to stop. We took our time hiking this particular pass, and that's exactly what was needed to really take it in. And then, like many nights, we retired our dirty hiking boots in search for good drink and food. The next day, we headed out in search for the Kilmartin Stones, something that I have to admit was purely fangirl motivated. Although I could argue the academic and scholar in me really wanted to see some standing stones, it was the Outlander fangirl that motivated this trip. Because Diana Gabaldon's stones, Craig na Dun, are fictional, and the Outlander set's stones are made of styrofoam. I'm sorry to tell you if you didn't already know. I knew I had to find some standing stones to replicate Claire's experience. Now, there are stone circles in Scotland, but because they're farther north than we were planning on going, I got my sights on Kilmartin, which was in our pathway, and I have to say I was really happy that we came to this place. There was, as I approached the stone to touch it, a little bit of hesitation on my part, especially because there's a sign that warned, people have believed, the stones are will set a curse if you touch them. And I read it, and then my brain was like, but we have to touch them for Instagram, for Outlander, for the fangirl in me that came all this way to touch some standing stones. And I don't regret it. Afterwards, because I didn't fall through time, we decided to go for coffee. We drove out to Oban, where we did a tour of their distillery, which was neat because we had done Macallan's, which is one of the largest, and then Oban is one of the smallest distilleries. So it was interesting to compare the two tours and how they do things. It was also fun on the trip to get a different taste of Scotland depending on where we were, and we really tried to pair the scotch we were drinking with the region we had the opportunity to be in. We enjoyed walking around the lovely town of Oban, and then were delighted that we had the opportunity to eat at a beautiful restaurant called The Coast.